It's finally here. The long-awaited Fallout London overhaul is finally available, and honestly, I'm blown away. The work Team Folon was able to do is beyond impressive. Taking place on the mean streets of London, we have new factions to explore, more than a few new areas, and tons of references to British pop culture. There's so much to unpack in this mod that even after my first full playthrough lasting over 30 hours, I've still not fully explored 2 entire faction quest lines. So trust me when I say that hopping into this is definitely a worthwhile experience. But if you're on the fence and want to see what a typical playthrough might look like, let's dive in and see exactly what Fallout London has to offer. The run begins like many before it, waking up in a pile of my own juices and then making my character. Now, because of the time that London released, this was so new that Luke's menu and some of the other mods I used to make pre-made characters weren't compatible yet, which allowed me to play around with the character creator inside the game. Normally I wouldn't point something like this out, but it does feel like something was wrong with the character creator, only because it seemed like there were far less options to make overly goofy people. But it's not the end of the world, just something I noticed. Then came time for the stats, and honestly, being in London, there was really only one build to go with, being the Nothing Personal Kid build, consisting of a 9 in strength, a 9 in agility, and everything else dumped in endurance for health. However, something different that Fallout London adds to the mix is it brings back the character traits that you could pick up at the beginning of Fallout New Vegas. Traits can only be selected at the beginning of character creator, and just like with Fallout New Vegas, they all have positives and negatives. I decided to go with Chem Head because the ability to quadruple any chem duration just seemed overly powerful, especially with my love for Jet. And then to spice it up, I took Sleepwalking. This does nothing positive for you, but every time you sleep in a bed, you end up in a new random location. And seeing how this is in an entirely undiscovered location, it made sense to kinda see what the other side of the fence looked like from time to time. After making our character, an unseen entity referred to as Agent Smythe begins talking to the scientists, asking how their work is going, to which they say that this is the best they've ever done. More than likely referring to our player character. But before the scientists can continue to stroke their egos, a different faction of individuals breaks in and blows up the joint and allows us to escape. We're now free to roam around our surroundings, with it being very clear that a small misunderstanding had blown way over proportion. But disregard that, because the real enemy of this entire area are rad shrews, a new type of enemy that sees its own version of experimentation. But instead of joining our side to fight against our oppressors, it would rather bend me over a terminal desk. Without too much issue, I'm able to sneak around them and grab the Attaboy, London's rival to the Pip-Boy. And I've gotta say, the Pip-Boy's nostalgic, but damn does this thing look good. Continuing through the lab, I get stopped again by Agent Smythe, only for them to let me go due to the fact that the lab is still being raided. And if you've ever wondered who funds these endeavors, look no further than the packages that their parts come in. Making it into a lift, I'm treated to a face-to-face, if you can even call it that, with Smythe. They inform me that I'm surpassing expectations, so as a reward they unlock a door allowing me to leave. But that last line got lost in translation as I now found myself stuck to a mannequin climbing up an escalator, only to free myself by sending the mannequin to its demise. Further in, I found a note telling me to do it, so of course I'm going to. After doing some more exploring, I was really taking in the sights. Sure, these are just regular metro tunnels, but this looks fantastic! It gives off this lived-in feeling, whereas Fallout 4 felt very devoid of life before or after the bombs. And speaking of feeling lived in, soon I was able to board a train that took me out to see the city itself. That is, before a train derailment sent us on a tumble, giving us a permanent debuff until otherwise cured, but also finally putting us on the ground of London itself. Arriving on a dark night, we admire some trash and then run to the leaders of the Vagabonds, one of London's major gangs, and the same people attacking the lab we just broke out of. We explained our lack of know-how on what biscuit goes best with our afternoon tea, and the leader Sebastian suggested heading off and getting our new affliction checked out and possibly cured, and potentially even learning about where we came from in the process. However, instead of just rolling with the Vagabonds, we hit our first fork in the road. We could roll with these Peaky Blinders cosplayers, or head to a group of people referred to as the Thamesfolk. Sebastian warned us that looks can be deceiving, and at the sound of a potential new race of people, I went with the mystery option. Despite not wanting to hang out with London's finest, Sebastian still gave us our first unique weapon of the run. A freaking butterfly knife with its own animations! Chat and I immediately got to styling on some hooligans unlucky enough to cross paths with us, all before crossing a dog fight. With a new dog model at risk of missing out on its next serving of bickies, I took out the attackers and then scolded this beautiful baby's owner, making him release Churchill into my care and earning us our first new companion of the run. Look at how precious he is! With Churchill by my side, we wandered the streets of London, but since it was the middle of the night, we decided to take a nap, meaning it was now time to spin the wheel and see where our sleepwalking perk would send us off to. So, whereas we were once over here, now we're way out in the bush! And once again, Team Folon knocked it out of the park. The countryside of Fallout London is just as hustling and bustling as its city counterparts. And look, they even have horses! We investigated some farms, found a traveling merchant, and even ended up in a one-on-one with a Radger, one we were clearly not going to win. So to improvise, I found a nearby settlement that thankfully had a turret to help fell the beast. Because as much as I like being chased through tall plants where I'm only one sprained ankle away from death, living suits me better. It brings out my best side. Before we move forward, let's talk about our savior's settlement. We had arrived at Camelot, and seeing Lancelot posted outside had me more than excited to— oh, we can't get in? That's lame. Turned away, but determined to return, I ventured out only to run into beefeaters. While these ruffians might have a silly name, they're actually cannibals, and I'm built like a midnight snack, meaning a brawl was inevitable. It took quite a bit of kiting and tons of ammo, but while scavenging their bodies like they picked apart meals, I managed to defeat them and get one of the best weapons in the game, a flag on a stick. Oh, and New Drip turning me into a fancy cannibal. I hear the beef is in season now. With my weapon of mass patriotism in hand, I checked out the surrounding areas, stumbling upon the Battersea Cats and Dogs home. And just like the name on the outside, it was full of cats and— between the dogs trying to remove my toes one by one and the hooligans shooting me from their cozy hiding spots, I was fighting for my life while being trapped in corners, and even with making it to the second floor, the denizens proved to give me that Fallout London welcome. But besides being beaten over the head by thugs and advertisements alike, I found a doll. Not just any doll, mind you, a cute Thulu doll. This kicked off a quest, and considering the Eldritch quests of Fallout games are usually fairly lacking with the exception of Dunwich Boars and Fallout 4, seeing Fallout London offer up their own quest immediately sent me into Sherlock Holmes mode. How many of these little dolls were there? Where did they hide? What reward lied at the end of the quest? I decided to take a nap, because the last one worked so well, so let's see where we go this time, and stumbled into chain smoking at its finest. I'd put that out if I was you. You're standing next to some very violent explosive plot devices. However, as far as exploring is, let's see about hopping back onto that main quest line. Time to track down the Thames folk. Heading towards the objective, I got told that if I wanted to meet these recluses, I'd have to head the long way around, and while this homie did update my quest, he constantly told me to steer clear of these people, to which I hopped the fence and ran towards them anyway. By this point in the run, I had my melee perks sorted, being Rooted, Blitz, and a new perk called Slayer, which increased melee damage and swing speed, so dealing with whatever subterranean horrors awaited me posed little threat. Especially with this claymore I picked up at the Cats and Dogs house. Well, almost anything. Catching the clap at the sewage network is bound to take a few years off your lifespan. Moving past leeches and motivational kitty posters, I found the Thames folk, mutated humans that were unlucky to have made contact with the River Thames after a British Tea Party. Besides their outward appearance, they were actually pretty reasonable people. I told them about Sebastian sending me here to ask for help in curing my afflictions, but she said that even though they could help, first I'd have to help them out of a sticky situation. Their main living area had been overrun by monsters, meaning that the rest of the Thames folk had to fall back to the market for safety. However, someone named the Ferryman was still down there in the residential district fighting to keep the monsters at bay. If we went and helped him clear out the monsters, then the Thames folk would help us. So, like the hero I wasn't, I made my way downtown and started chopping up things I didn't quite understand. Like leeches. And what the hell is this thing? Meaning with the Ferryman, he gave me some explosives. He said the fight was all but lost, and to save the market, I'd have to head into the fray and blow out the supports, which was super easy. Like, so easy, I don't know why the ferryman couldn't have done it himself. He probably caught something from those leeches. Wait, can mutated people even catch diseases? Now pondering the very meaning of life, and while we were cursed with normal issues like getting sick instead of getting cool new fish powers, I headed back to Rachel to report on my successful mission. Only, she had headed into the market, so Before heading out, I snooped around a top section and ran into another cute Cthulhu doll. Is this a sign? What do you do? Meeting back up with Rachel, she informed me that while they knew of where I came from, the meat of that knowledge was with a boy named Archie. But as these walking fishmen are very wary of humans unless they commit acts of terrorism, they kicked him to the curb. But the ferryman I had just helped out knew where to find him, and thankfully, he was willing to cooperate. Turns out this alleged Archie also came from a lab. A better one, and therefore didn't have amnesia, meaning if I could find him, I could figure out how to get back to the labs and figure out what the hell was going on. Luckily, Archie was just chilling at another settlement that the ferryman had dropped him off at, but recently it sounded like that settlement had followed under hardship. So with a quick once-over of Thames Hammond and a minor shoplifting spree, I made my way over to Archie's last known whereabouts. Time for Crab. Archie was chilling in a rundown airplane, but due to a growing population and Mitten having mirelurks, I was tasked with doing some quick smash and grabs. Just make sure to mind the water here, as these rads are high enough to melt the skin right off your body. Perfect for shedding any unwanted weight right before a family outing. After laying down the smackdown to some crabs, I was able to make my way inside the plane and meet with Archie. He told me that he was once part of a group headed by a ghoul named Lazarus, a supposed expert on the underground bunkers. But during their last outing, they were ambushed and imprisoned, until they escaped and then were picked up by the Thames folk. When pressed for further details, Archie claimed that if I brought him back to the rough location where he was picked up from, he should be able to lead me back, but in order to do so, I had to go convince the ferryman to take us across the River Thames. Seeking out the ferryman, he was over the moon to do such a simple task, and even rewarded me with a shooting gallery. How nice! But after that explosive set piece, I arrived at City Hall. And still on the hunt for cute Cthulhus, I headed inside, only to get jumped by a womble. Now look, I don't know what a womble is or why it's trying to rip my face off, but when I went to look this thing up, all I found were these Muppets. So someone out there is clearly taking the piss because that is not this! Yeah, fighting this thing wasn't even worth it, so to take out my frustrations, I went to show the little beef eaters how to actually serve up a nice meal for once. I swear every time I visit these guys, my character gets more and more unhinged. So to bring myself back down to reality, I went and visited the Jack the Ripper Museum, and then fought actual cultists just up the street at St. Bartholomew's Hospital. Sure, they may look like beef eaters, but game recognizes game, and I bet you anything these homies are hiding a cute Cthulhu in there. Mark my words. I showed the cultist who the most devoted follower was, but then failed the vibe check as my lungs filled with something called tunnel cough, killing me instantly. Alright, so I may not be completely devoted yet, but I'm gonna figure out a way to get into this place one way or another. Since I was hopelessly sidetracked at this point, I decided to get more acquainted with London's denizens, like the Gatherers. I still know virtually nothing about these guys other than that they have sick outfits, and as much as I wanted to contain my inner loot goblin, I was soon hacking and whacking and slashing. But nothing, and I mean nothing, beats patriotism. Whereas a claymore is big, bulky, and gets stuck on everything, for some reason a flag staggers and attacks nearly 3 times as fast, allowing you to practically solo 8 enemies at the same time. Casting Couch, eat your heart out. There's a new star on the rise. After bashing the Gatherers, I decided to track down a distress signal. This led me through a destroyed building and took me to a sky garden. But my insight must have been climbing with my descent into insanity, because when I got to the rooftop, the person calling for help was already dead. So, who made the call? No! It's another dirty womble! With the creatures of London serving me more than enough slices of humble pie, it only made sense to pursue the main quest, which involved meeting up with the ferryman. While I had walked around the Thames River and took a more scenic route, Archie and the ferryman traveled by dinghy. Lucky bastards, they didn't have to tussle with the wombles. When I asked what the plan was on getting into these underground labs, the ferryman said that they had retraced Archie's steps to a nearby monument. Inside that was the entrance we were after. But while I said we, it turns out that instead of us going, it would just be me. And to twist the knife deeper, Archie claimed to know where Lazarus was, that expert bunker guide. So in order to get his whereabouts, I'd have to go in and make it back alive. Well, considering I've killed my way through London streets so far, this shouldn't be too different. As soon as I entered the lab, someone moaned in anticipation? Not sure I wanted to investigate that, but since the skeleton welcomed me with rotating arms, I felt more at ease, even if everyone else was less lively. I searched through rooms until I stumbled on one with 3 beds. Ooh, another Cthulhu doll! What do you do? The rest of the lab was in disarray. It was clear a struggle had broken out, and I'd wager that whatever made that noise at the entrance wasn't friendly. But upon investigating the noise, the door was locked. This had me looking for terminals to turn the power back on, which turned on the hallway full of turrets. Lucky for me, I'm built different, or being shot by 6 turrets at the same time could have been bad for my health. Pushing past the turrets, I found the source of the noise. A super clone experiment. Now this might actually be a hard fight, but with the ability to slow time for 40 seconds and take enough chems to turn Weenie Hut Juniors into the salty spittoon, I felled the beast all without taking a single hit. Patriotism wins again. Before leaving, if this lab was making clones, even if they were only in the early stages, I had to shut down the lab before they could make anything that would actually bring trouble to London. Returning to Archie and letting him know that everyone he knew in the lab had been pulled apart like string cheese, he told me that Lazarus had headed off to St. Paul's Sanctuary, which acted like a double whammy. Whereas I needed to go there for quest purposes, the ferryman wanted me to take Archie there so he could have a better chance at life. So dropping off Churchill to hang out with the ferryman, I took Archie as my companion and headed towards the sanctuary. Which didn't actually take that long, in fact it was actually just down the street. When I arrived, I was stopped by a Frenchman who told me he would let me in because my mother was a hamster and my father smelled of elderberries. Which is kind of a fucked up thing to say because I don't even know who my parents are. I woke up in a vat for Christ's sake. So to change his mind, I got to stomping the hooligan parade that waltzed up to Sanctuary's front door. Oh, now you want to comply. Well, sort of. He agreed to let me in, but only after I went and took out the hooligan hangout spot. If there's no leader, then maybe the hooligans will think twice about attacking a church. I got distracted on my way over and visited the Gauntlet instead. While it was full of hooligans, they posed almost no threat, causing me to level up to level 8 and take another new perk, Sneering Imperialist. This, much like the perk of the same name in New Vegas, helps me take out the lesser tribes of London with extreme prejudice even faster. How neat! So you can imagine how the hooligans over at the Guildhall went. Charging through with the power of the flag, all who opposed, or just existed, caught their fair share of sharp pokes and prods, all before becoming lunch. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention I'm a cannibal now. Look, if you're gonna drink the Kool-Aid, you might as well act the part, okay? I can't let the beef eaters enjoy all of this by themselves, now can I? On my way back to Sanctuary, I showed off my sick Halo Reach Griffball skills and made a meal out of some gatherers. But arriving at the Sanctuary, it was clear that even with the hooligan leader dealt with, the attacks weren't gonna stop coming. Which meant I was just used as an assassin by the church to take out someone who probably didn't pay their weekly tithe. Look, I'm not here to judge. After all, I was allowed access in and told to meet with the bishop, who I'm sure is a very chill dude. But that seems kind of twisted, don't you think? Heading inside the sanctuary, this place was massive. So massive, it even housed a doctor capable of curing one of my ailments. And after checking in on everyone's favorite chef, I met with Bishop Whaler. When asked about Lazarus, he said he had returned from an expedition that had gone horribly wrong, and hadn't heard much of him since, but since Lazarus was gone, he instructed me to talk with Father Luke as he was investigating his whereabouts. I talked with Luke and he wanted me to break into Lazarus's room and do some snooping, to which I found out he was dealing chems. It's not too uncommon in post-apocalyptia considering everyone still needs their fix. I tracked down a stash Laz had left for a buyer and got a location where a meet and greet was supposed to take place. While I made my way over, I ran into some Tommies having a dispute with some hooligans. Seeing an opportunity for some armor, I sprung into action, before finding out that dogs are just as hungry as I am. Which just means the Tommies got an up-close and personal lesson in flag tactics. Now with some new threads, I met at the rendezvous location only to find that Lazarus had been kidnapped. Sounds like a trip to Winter Garden is due. But what's the rush? I enjoyed some sightseeing and even was rewarded with a penetrating meat hook, which meant getting to the juicy bits all the more easier. I even stopped off at the Steppenny apartment and even found another cute Thulu doll. With 4 in my possession, the want to find out more about these little monsters increased. Surely they're for something, I just can't pin it yet. Before heading to the main quest, I decided to check in on the Thames folk and even picked up a mission to go fetch some clothes for them. Like with most quests in this game, I got distracted on the way over and instead infiltrated a group of sailors stuck in dry dock. They didn't pose too much of a threat, especially since everyone that fell became a snack for me, but they did drop flintlock weapons, capable of dishing out massive damage but at the cost of your reload taking longer than dial-up internet in the 90s. A small price to pay for a nearly one-shot potential. The slaughter didn't end there though. I made my way on board a ship and pulled off the worst quickscope attempt you've ever seen. all before getting bodied by more Jacktar members as I got overconfident in taking another ship. I also found the old Royal Navy College, and got to work cleaning this place out, but I should have heeded the signs outside. While the enemies inside weren't anything to write home about, when I tried to leave, I learned that the door just didn't want to work. I checked through the dungeon to see if there was another way out, and unfortunately, no, there was not. Meaning this place, even though it didn't have anything super crazy in it, was off limits. So with buildings not wanting to operate, and now under the night sky, where do you go in London? How about Fleet Street? I hear they have one of the best barbers around, and once you've gotten a trim, swing by Mrs. Higgins' pie shop. And to make your night even that much brighter, why not stop off at an unusually blue call box to call someone to come get you? Alright, that's enough sidetracking. It's time to investigate Winter Garden. Walking it was actually pretty easy. These syndicate members noped out of the way at the size of my massive muscles, and let me into the back rooms where they kept Lazarus. Poor man was trying out his skill at impersonating Jack Frost, but I still needed info on the underground labs. He said he was hired by the government to build the labs, which would explain why Archie called him an expert. He claimed that his magnum opus was a lab out in Islington, but recently it had fallen into disarray with the surrounding area being filled with tunnel cough. The same thing that deterred me from Bartholomew's hospital. Yes, I haven't forgotten. Lazarus explained that tunnel cough would kill me unless I had a gas mask, and to get one, I'd have to go visit the Tommies over at the Imperial War Museum where they set up shop. Before I left, he warned me that Islington would be a rough area, as most people tried to avoid it. Well, that might deter normal people, but I just got a quest update for it. I traveled over to the War Museum with little fuss and tried to requisition said gas mask, which for some reason was a lot harder than you would have thought. The Colonel Major had me meet with the General and offered me a gas mask in exchange for ridding the Bank of England from hooligans. Seems easy enough. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. I went and recruited help from the Frenchmen I helped out ages ago back at St. Paul's Sanctuary, and then headed through the metros towards the bank. Hooligans tried to put up a fight, but these guys will forever be the throwaway raider equivalent, which means my meat hook here was making quick work of them. Arriving at the bank, the Frenchman and his goons joined me in taking out the trash, and the best part is, they didn't even yell at me for enjoying a quick feed. Finally, some people who don't find cannibalism icky. Now, normally I would have glossed over this bank assault, as most of it is just cleaning out hooligans, but Fallout London takes the chance to sprinkle in another enemy type here, being dryads. They didn't do very much as they were cut down before I gave them a chance, but who knows what else this mod can be hiding. This is cool as hell. I fought my way through hooligans galore and had to navigate the many twists and turns looking for keys to unlock doors that would allow me to progress, except this is where I hit a wall. The first key was easy enough to find, but the second, if it was any closer, it had jumped out and bit me. I searched for nearly 20 minutes before chat had told me they saw it prior. Thank you so much, as I thought I was going insane! With that key in hand, I was able to push into the remaining areas of the banks and fight Moneybag Sullivan. Is he important? I don't know, but he had a funny name. Speaking of funny, I also found a woman who happened to be stuck in the vault. Only issue is, I had such a small intelligence that she wouldn't talk to me. Come to think about it, I never went back to see if I could help her. I wonder how she's doing. With the bank cleared, I returned to the Tommies and got my gas mask. And look, it even talks to me! The Colonel Major informed me that Islington might be better avoided, but with a final farewell to our Lord and Savior Todd Howard and buying a laser musket that would make Preston mark another settlement on your map, I put the main quest on hold and immediately headed to St. Bartholomew's Hospital. With a gas mask on my head, it was time to see what the tunnel cough-infested building was hiding. Kicking in the door to the hospital like someone rushing to the emergency room for a splinter, I began the search for anything cult-like, and that's just what I found, because just upstairs was a porta diner! You'd have to be insane to seek out each one of these in a Fallout game, so I'll just mark this location so I can tell others to stay away. But besides that pie machine, I found some cultists vibing in the corner. And what were they huddled around? Oh yeah, another cute Thulu. This was my 5th one, and before I could even ask what it did, I found a note. A note that talked about cults and hidden meetings. And the best part, my quest updated with a new location to visit. To hell with this main quest, I've come this far and I'm not leaving without these dolls as secrets. Heading back to the Bank of England's surrounding area, I arrived at the London Mithraeum. Inside was a note talking about a cabin in Greenwich where a cult was trying to open a portal, and downstairs happened to be the leaders of said cult. So naturally I played Gimme Your Loot and got to introducing them one at a time to my claw, before finding a sacrificial blade. Not only was the raw damage so much better than my claw, but it also applied bleed. Hell yeah, I can get behind this. Although it still has issues with wombles, unless you take copious amounts of chems. Just be prepared to piss those chems down the drain because the gear you get isn't worth the ticket to ride. Let's go see what that cabin has in store. Up until this point we've seen the mean streets of London, and now heading into this game's own version of the glowing sea, I was blown away. Because instead of going into a bare, desolate, irradiated hell, it instead had an abundant mushroom forest. This mixed with tunnel cough particles really added an eerie location for a cultist hideout. 10 out of 10 would join the cult again. Inside this cabin was a summoning circle of sorts with 16 slots, and after placing my dolls down, it just meant I had 11 more to chase down. You know, basic math really helped out there. I don't know if I could have ever figured out how many dolls I still needed without it. With the quest for the dolls at another roadblock, I started kicking in every door I came across. But just because you found a cultist relic in one hospital doesn't mean that every hospital has one. Alright, time to progress the main story for a while. I ventured out to the Hackney checkpoint and found a ghoul in a sticky situation. So after taking out the hooligans, I freed him, earning myself my third companion for the run. Righto, Arthur, you better not have any issues with my diet or we're gonna have problems. Together, Arthur and I pushed into Hackney, immediately running into a gang war in progress. But due to the strength of the sacrificial blade, they were little more than bumps in the road. And fun fact, Arthur doesn't care about eating on the run. He's gonna fit in here just fine. We followed a group of roundels who led us through Miller's territory, but then I decided to check some nearby locations to get my wobble fix. Oh, and I nearly forgot. With all of the new additions in Fallout London and with the majority wanting you dead, it begs the question, how do you feel about sea mines with legs? I smashed out some other locations in the area, but with the power of the cult on my side, there was little these hooligans could do to defend themselves. That is until I ran into some cultists outside. Instead of skin suits, these guys wore robes, so I didn't think they would pose a threat. But after being flipped over and blasted with rockets of all things, it was clear these homies were not to be trifled with. And even with the goal of focusing down the heavy hitters first, I still managed to catch a death to these random druids. Fueled by nothing more than spite now, I threw out all of my ordnance and still couldn't nut up when the time came to shut these rogue homeless people up. I mean, who uses a rocket launcher in a cult? When I did finally follow these losers, I was the only loser standing, as they didn't even have anything worth taking. I mean, besides the rocket launcher, I guess. Again, why the hell were these homeless pensioners so strong? Continuing on, I dove through some cleaner water than the River Thames and crossed into Islington. Why the hell is this place so secluded? This felt like a bitch to get to. The outskirts of Islington looked much like Hackney, and like the rest of London. Living arrangements that had fallen on hard times due to nuclear annihilation. And pushing in deeper, I found myself face to face at the Islington Charter House. Why is this place important? Well, it houses Miller, the leader of the goons I've been munching on in the area. Surprisingly, I was able to just walk in and converse with him. He talked about a man named James Marsh. Miller owed him a life debt and offered me 2,500 tickets if I sought him out and repaid that debt. Why couldn't Miller do it? Well, he's too busy looking majestic on his throne, that's why. Putting Miller's quest on the back burner with much of every other quest up to this point, I did some exploring and found that Miller's men really didn't like the fifth column. Whatever that is. I stopped off at a convenience shop allowing me to grab my daily dose of the occult and a Judge Dredd. I mean, Constable Cruel comic. I don't know how I keep getting them confused. So far, Islington looked to just be another borough. That is until I got to the quarantine zone. This was the reason for sourcing that gas mask. Whereas enemies used to be just London's brightest roaming the streets, now I was fighting feral ghouls. The sky took on a red hue and lightning rolled over. Tunnel coughs seeped from the cracks in the ground and the victims of the plague adorned most buildings. Heading further into the heart of the zone, things began to look more and more devoid of life. Living life, that is. Radiation seeped from the ground and some living tunnel coughers struggled just to stand. Not really living, but merely waiting for the disease to take its toll. With the struggle of living outside, I ventured into Wolfie's Exchange to see if the disease carried its way inside.
And I don't know why I thought that doors would keep the airborne disease outside, but feral ghouls were more than happy to welcome me into their shop. For as harsh as this area sounds, I implore you to stop by here if you're a melee build, as this houses the strongest weapon I found during my playthrough. The return policy's bat. I mean, look at this damage! It may not look like much, but considering this has almost 100 more damage than the sacrificial blade, speaks volumes. Returning outside, I came across many of the unlucky, and then stopped off at the local to see how the returns policy worked out, and I am glad to say, this thing smacks it out of the park. An undetonated bomb greeted me outside, buried in the street, and further ahead was the Angel Underground Station, the one Lazarus spoke of back in Winter Garden, and hopefully home to the answers I seeked. Making it inside the station, Tunnel Cough had taken up residence, but a friendly voice chimed over the intercom. It was Smythe, mocking me! How lovely! Wait, hold on, put that thought on hold. We have enemies, and they're clones? This design looks fantastic, and I'm all for it. Especially since I saw tons of it as I moved through the metro. Between the body bags, skeletons, these clones were the only things out for my head, besides these turrets further up ahead. Oh, look, a sealed door! Damn you, Smythe! My one weakness! It's not like I could just go down this convenient train bridge that leads directly to the back door. How silly would that be? Now inside the lab, I got the beating and eating. This lab looked very similar to the one underneath the monument, but in a much better shape. I mean, hell, this one has staff that aren't torn apart. Now, interestingly enough, I found some hand scanner that allowed me to open up doors. But that would mean that my DNA was on file, right? Maybe I got passed around before ending up at the lab I broke out of? The plot thickens. Continuing the hunt, I found Smythe's living quarters and a cute Thulu for the road. Reading her terminal, it spoke of issues with the tunnel cough, finding a new green substance to help out with experiments, and the need to get swole. Sounds like pretty standard take over the world villainous behavior right here. Oh yeah, total bad shenanigans are happening here. But what's the point of this many potential clones? Unless these are supposed to be like that super clone I fought ages ago. Terminal, spill your secrets! Okay, so the green juice is more or less a back-to-tank from Star Wars. Alright, keep your secrets then. Pushing further into the lab, I entered a time section! We don't ever get those in Fallout! A hand scanner lay at the end of the room and in flooded super clones. So naturally, I popped more chems than the government had taxes on and got to issuing return policies. Considering these guys can be pretty tanky, 2 hits seems pretty good, and with a little more than 10 seconds, the room was freed from enemies and I was getting my arms sucked off by a mysterious device. Oh look! No more afflictions! Smythe came back on and said that since I was the main character and wasn't afraid to take every chem known to mankind, killing me off was going to be harder than she thought. So she said to come find her at the Palace of Westminster and all would be revealed. Why does this sound like a trap? Heading out of the lab, I took an empty metro tunnel filled with raspberry jam. This led outside to a train station filled with more blank clones, and whereas I would have normally just bashed them for having red nameplates, now I wondered if they and I were one and the same. Was I a clone? Heading back to London with more questions than answers, I stopped in at the St. Pancras International Hotel, and I'm glad I did. With the excuse to test out a couple of different weapons on some cultists, I searched high and low for any cute Thulu doll. However, with the mass clearing out of spooky club members, all I found was a Mirelurk. Shame, really. These guys are pushovers! Right, don't fuck with crabs. Noted. The rest of the cultists tried their best to stop me, but when you bring a knife to a rocket fight, there's little you can do. Unfortunately, I didn't find any cute Thulus in the building, so I went back to the London streets to see what else it had to offer. But maybe I should stop off at the University College Hospital. Maybe I can get a cure for this occult addiction. Oh, nope, never mind, the hunt continues. With Arthur rejoining us after being absent for that entire underground section, cause yeah, I don't know where the hell this man went, and us approaching Trafalgar Square, we decided to progress the main plot some more. We needed to get into Westminster to pursue Smythe, and after talking with Stacy here, she pointed us to the Tommy guard who would just let us in. Westminster is a sight to behold. While the bulk of London Street resembles what you would expect from a nuclear detonation, Westminster was actually unscathed, looking more like pre-war London. Not a sign of decay, and everyone walking by was well dressed as if nothing beyond the walls had impacted them at all. It was so calm that I even took a tour around the area. Look, they even have peacocks! So does that mean that... Nope, the water is still radiated. Okay, well, it's almost untouched by Fallout. I bumped into Buckingham Palace and saw my first glimpse at power armor. Nice to know that still exists. Nearby the palace was a train crash, something I'm somewhat of an expert on. The Tommy investigating explained that this all seemed incredibly suspicious as nothing had run on this track for years, and the gentry, being the government in London, didn't even seem that bothered at the crash. So I got to snooping, and wouldn't you know it, Smythe left a business card. Time to go visit the palace and get to the bottom of this. On the way to the palace, I ran into Tenpenny Manor, everyone's favorite early quest in Fallout 3, so not wanting to miss a chance for a potential cameo, and because chat wanted to see the inside, I waltzed right in and went straight to the penthouse, because we all know I just exude penthouse energy. And if you didn't like Tenpenny from Fallout 3, you will here, as in his room, right next to Mr. Wobbles the Peacock, is a cute Thulu, ripe for the taking. Heading back outside, I bumped into the chimney sweep and a maid arguing. The chimney sweep spoke about one of his friends being stuck in Tenpenny's penthouse and needed me to go free him, which is the worst thing this kid could have asked. Because kids are normally unkillable in Fallout, except when I see a prompt, I press it. How was I supposed to know it would work? Sure, it was my fault, but the prompts, man, I didn't think it would actually do this. Oh, I could take his boots, neat. Alright, where were we? Oh yeah, Westminster Palace. I rocked up and immediately got told I was about to be punished. Not in those words exactly, but you'll see what I mean in just a minute. Before I could gain access, I had to head out and get a petition signed by the 4 boroughs leaders of London, which doesn't sound that hard in practice, especially if you've done every quest up until this point, but even with all the pit stops along the way, I had not. This meant I would need to go and complete various tasks to please the leaders, or obtain something with their writing on it, as there was someone who could forge their signatures. But with this being my first playthrough, I decided to just see how this would play out without killing off factions. So let's get this show on the road. Or we could find the rest of the Cthulhus. A couple members of my chat had been searching for them as well, and so teaming up we decided to smash this out and see what exactly lied at the end of this squiggly road. First I revisited Thames Haven. It turns out these little guys respawn after so many days, so grabbing a duplicate won't hurt. But a certain Mad Dog and Sam said that just by doing the Vagabond questline, I would encounter more than just a few. So we headed out to revisit our Peaky Blinders cosplayers, where we were greeted to an explosive entrance. When the dust settled, I was spoken to by Yvette to go and remove a syndicate scout that started all of this mess. But before doing that, I stopped off at the Hound to grab a quick drinking buddy. And then I rummaged through a parking garage for a little cute Thulu that needed a home. But what's the rush with pursuing informants? I then headed out to City Hall to pick up a friend, Greenwich Pinder for someone who'd fallen on hard times, and now we met with the scout at Dom's Cafe. It didn't end well for her. Returning to Yvette, she was more than pleased, or maybe she's just stuck with a permanent smile on her face. Smiling or not, she then left me to my own devices. Or should I say the mercy of the vagabonds, as now I was out here doing odd jobs for everyone, like repairing a radio for a blind ghoul named Nelson. This quest played out in such a way that Nelson would ask me to fix a part on his radio, to which I would go to another member and ask for the repairs, only to then be sent to a ganja farm. However, Nadia's trade post was a conflict of interest. On one hand, there was a cute Thulu, but on the other hand, why the hell is my boy in the bin? Eventually, I was able to complete all the odd jobs to fix this radio, only for Nelson to finally turn it on and then complain about how it was only playing depressing stuff. Turns out an execution for a vagabond prisoner was being broadcast over the radio, and it just so happens that Yvette had only recently gone on a solo mission. Coincidence? I think not. So guess who got tasked with heading out and seeing what all the hubbub was about? But when I arrived, she didn't seem to remember who I was. All those smiles were just her being nice. I tried to jog her memory, thinking she had a bout of amnesia, only for the syndicate guards to start shooting up the place. What the hell is happening? What did I do wrong? Well, Yvette is running away with someone, so maybe I should follow them? Oh, I get what I did wrong now. She was incognito and trying to rescue her friend. Well, I guess that's what happens when you hire someone with a 1 in intelligence to come help you. Regardless, the mission was a smashing success. So much so that Sebastian Gaunt, the leader of the Vagabonds, offered me an invitation to join his exclusive gang. Finally, I can be a part of something! Before I was able to get my employee benefits from the Vagabonds, I had to prove myself yet again. This time by taking out a syndicate leader, which just meant going around chopping up pups until their leaders rolled up. Which, when you're a teleporting batsman with enough force to break a power scouter, it doesn't take too long. Returning to Sebastian, he was practically foaming at the mouth at the sight of the Iod's pin. So much in fact that he threw a whole set of clothes at me and told me to come visit him in a bit. Whoa there, buddy! Slow your scone! Rather than having a solo meeting, Sebastian went straight for group play. He grabbed all his lieutenants and had them voice their new plans on how to strike back against the Syndicate, especially with them performing attacks so close to our base. Johnny here talked about boarding a ship they had, freeing the prisoners on board, and then blowing the place sky high. Not wanting to get too ahead of myself, I wanted to take these requests one mission at a time, which meant storming the HMS Dredge was next on the table. I broke in and took out any syndicate running the joint. This allowed me to break out the prisoners. The best part though, was finding yet another cute Thulu doll hidden on a crate. To celebrate, I set the whole ship to explode and even fought my way past more syndicate members outside. Now it was time to get my cult on. We had just enough dolls to see where this rabbit hole went. Placing all the dolls and praying to Todd Howard in his Bethesda office in the sky, the floor dropped out, and Arthur and I fully descended into madness. We awoke in some shadow realm with our only task being to find a way out. We progressed slowly, feeling uneasy, and bumped into an aberration. But before I even knew what was going on, this thing had ripped out my neck. It continued to batter me around, with damn near enough strength to one-shot me at almost full health, meaning the only option I had was to hero up and run while time was slowed. This gave me enough room to race through this otherworldly plane, and without it, I don't know if I would have survived. These things were everywhere. It was hit after hit, and just when I thought I was safe, I got hit again. I ran for what little life I could preserve, with Arthur acting more like a distraction than a helper, and eventually I ended up in a stairway to nowhere room. Without too much issue in seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I raced towards a different Cthulhu doll, Lovecraft's Presence. This teleported me out of the realm and placed me back in London. At first I thought I had been scammed, as the game just seemed to be monochrome now, but actually this doll is a massive buff to your character, offering a +2 to charisma, luck, water breathing, and dark vision, all while just having it in your possession. How insane is that? A perfect find for a rather interesting quest. Well played, Team Folon. Well played. Now, after fully gone down the rabbit hole, I returned to the Vagabonds to report on a successful loss of sanity, and told them that my eldritch parents wouldn't let me playing with losers in the middle of a gang war. So I went off to progress the main quest instead. This took me to Brickton, run by none other than Tim the Enchanter. For those of you who may have forgotten like I did while running around, I was to act like the postal dude and get people to sign my petition allowing me into the Westminster Palace. But Tim here informed me that the Tommies, who were only mere meters away and could probably hear everything we were saying anyway, had tried to make contact with another tribal group in the area. But due to the surrounding area being over lava, contact paused when a bridge collapsed and now both sides blamed each other. But whereas the homies in Brickton just wanted to chill and grieve their crispy friends, the Tommies wanted to have them pay taxes! Tim, aka Roach here, wanted me to go talk to the Tommies about removing the taxes and broker peace between the groups, and honestly, I don't see how you could do anything other than that, as Roach here doesn't exactly have much to offer up anyway. I met with the Tommies leader, who rightfully so was pissed about losing men, and said that due to their mission being to make peace with these tribals named the Crodians, if I went and talked to them about obeying the Queen's laws, they would consider peace with the Bricktonians. Somewhere along the lieutenant's speech, my stomach started rumbling and a question popped into my head. In Fallout 4, quest givers are marked as essential, so surely that means if I do this, he won't— Oh shit, he actually died?! Having a warning pop up saying that the Knights of Camelot were about to come spin the block, I decided to tempt fate and see how many Tommies it would take to even notice I was here. And I'm sad to report that they didn't even care. It just goes to show that there's nothing under those helmets of theirs. But since this is my first playthrough and I want to see how all these factions coexist, I decided to throw it back and just see how this whole thing plays out. To the lava fields! Traversing across what structures remained at the Tommy's Bridge, I found the site where everything went wrong. And from here, it gets worse. To get where I needed to go, I needed to build a bridge, but the supplies to build said bridge are held in a pinder or bunker, and the key is in something called the Crystal Palace. So I headed over, and even ran into some hellhounds, which is a dope new feature, by the way. I traveled through a cave, visited Orlando outside of Disney property, and arrived at a talking gardener robot. Except due to my intelligence being so low, I couldn't talk my way through, meaning I was on the hook for whatever deed this machine had in store. And just what do you think it could be? How about a maze? I'm gonna make a long story very, very short, as I was stuck here for about 40 minutes looking at the same walls. I was looking for keys in radiation fields, getting killed by machine gun turrets, and then finding out how bright the sun was at close range. Hey, at least the mines are gone now. After finding all the keys needed to progress and a sweet new plasma pistol, I took out my frustrations on the gardener that had roped me into this place. Sure, you may have laughed at me for getting lost not even 2 feet from the starting line, but who's laughing now, huh? With the keys retrieved, I was able to make my way into the supplies bunker. After clearing out the ghouls inside, I can now construct a bridge all by myself. Fight through even more ghouls that looked like the aftermath of Obi-Wan having the high ground, and then ran into a Gehenna. I don't know exactly what this thing is, but everything loses a lot of its intimidation when you remove its kneecap privileges. Oh look! There are Tommies here. Wait, these are the jerks that Lieutenant Doyle claimed to have died! Turns out when the bridge collapsed, they pulled a rose from the Titanic and used the Bricktonians as the life preserver. This allowed them to get to safety, but no way to call back home. They had been abandoned. Until now, because thanks to unpaid labor from an unreliable wildcard, aka me, they could now head home. But that didn't mean I was out of the woods yet. Pushing further into Crodian territory, I finally met these tribals. These guys might be a bit infatuated with Old English Shakespeare, and they even gave me a quest to go fetch a play of his. Except if these guys think their wants and needs can take priority over my choices, they've got another thing coming! I've made contact, and seeing how these guys aren't monsters, I consider this quest complete. And after returning to the Tommies, I was able to get them to drop the taxes imposed on the Bricktonians, and even got my first signature. Only 3 more to go! Now we're rolling into Camden to seek out the pistols, and unlike most of London, these streets are actually calm. No shootouts, no mid-street shankings, it's quite a nice change of pace. I mean, even this homeless guy using a cop car for warmth seems like he's living his best life, so surely the Cyberfox should be— Holy shit, is that a twerking robot?! Sorry, where was I? Oh yeah, meet Apache, the leader here. Like with most of the other parts of the Hear Ye quest, she won't help me until I help her. And to do that, I gotta go take out the trash. But as the old adage goes, one man's trash is another man's lunch. With that business sorted, instead of Apache helping a homie out, I was then duped into helping her higher-ups with their own jobs as well. The pistols seem like they're gonna milk the hell out of this relationship. This involved me going and figuring out why the local water supplier had gotten stingy as of late, except that wasn't the case at all. Polly, who was in charge of the water supply, had run into some issues with the purifier seizing up, and because I needed anybody involved with these guys to sign my petition, I went off to investigate. Only to find out that a lone feral ghoul had snuck in and tried to start up its own brand of gamer girl bathwater. Of course, we can't stand for this. With the purifiers reset, I returned to Polly and got told that I wasn't done just yet. It turns out that while Polly had 2 purifiers, it wasn't enough to provide water to all of Camden, just those willing to join the pistols. So to fix this slight dilemma, I had to track down Mr. Gray's place, who had another purifier, and convince his child to help us out, since his dad had passed. Now, why couldn't I just walk in and take the purifier? Why couldn't I just put this kid in the chimney and light the match? Who knows? But through chatting, he said he would at least sell water to people, so I guess this will have to do for now. Next up was heading back to London and heading to the Lewis Assembly Station. Except I got stopped by Bookie, the only character that I ran into that actually said, "Hell yeah! What you want, homie?" He offered up a friendly wager. Get a sack weighing as much as your mom and carry it over a building. Of course, leaving out the part where I'm used as target practice by the local hooligans. Good thing I brought James Bond to help thin out the unruly company. Whereas I think this part could have been harder if I encountered it earlier in the run, being over level 20 with a nearly maxed out blitz build, these hooligans acted more like speed boosts rather than hurdles. Meaning that this small quest was actually rather intimidating if you were on the hooligan side. All you had to do was shoot the overweight freak, and instead they killed and ate all of your friends while you still had a sense of false confidence thinking you would win. Well, except you. You seem to get the memo. Getting back on track and raiding the police station, I was able to grab a weapons cache and return to the pistol lieutenant. I even got a sick new gun with sleight of hand pro. Too bad I'm spec'd for melee. This allowed me to go talk with Apache and got roped into yet another lieutenant mission. At least this one was pretty straightforward. I got tasked with heading out to Tenpenny Manor to grab some evidence that could be used to clear one of the pistols' name from a crime they didn't commit, allegedly. This finally got me in good with the pistols. Apache signed my petition and I can move on to happier times. like Miller and Islington. Turns out that quest he gave me ages ago was needed to get him to sign my petition. Off to St. Paul's Sanctuary, I'm looking for John Marsh. John, tell me what I need to do! At first, John here didn't want me to do anything, but eventually caved. Homie didn't seem like he had long to live anyway, so he decided one last bout of YOLO was in order. He spoke of his wife who unfortunately succumbed to ghoulification, and his only request was for you to go and put her down as peacefully as possible, if possible. Kicking in the door to the airport like the beginning of No Russian, I got to turning ghouls into fools as I tested out my returns policy. Now with screwdrivers in it. Don't scoff, this does shitloads of damage. Upon finding Jane, I knew what I had to do. Holy shit, she hits hard. Alright, new plan. No one gets legs anymore. I started to bash on Jane until she became invincible? Did I break it? I reloaded to save and tried again, taking out Jane's legs, the other ghouls in the room, and just like my first attempt, Jane let out a screech and once again became invincible. I tried to set up a massive trap to one-shot her, but we all know how a usual crisis encounter with mines go. Alright, what the hell is going on? So, popping enough chems to turn myself into a glowing ghoul, I absolutely bodied Jane only to watch her run away. Oh, this is a scripted fight. Oh, that makes so much more sense. As I pursued Jane, I fought some more ghouls and managed to find an incendiary combat shotgun. And just look at this model! Hot damn, this looks good! Not too much further in, I came face to face with Jane again. Too bad for her, I knew her tricks this time and chemmed out. Meaning after some very aggressive back shots, she went down in a slump. Time to let John know I took care of his wife. Huh, I guess he got wind of my triumphs. Well, at least Miller counts the debt as repaid, so that earns me another signature. Just one more left. Now back in Hackney, it was time to see what the Roundels needed so they could sign away their lives. I made my way to the shop, being the main base, and went to talk to Prince Pete Davies. Except I would have had more luck throwing my petition out the window, as this homie was so far gone that he couldn't even sign my petition even if he wanted to. I sent Prince Pete on a final trip. Only problem is, he again couldn't sign the petition even if he wanted to, so he didn't have anything with writing on his person. Alright, who do I need to help out this time? Running through the streets, I bumped into Dennis and Joan. They stood outside planning a frontal assault of a club Miller's men inhabited. This led to an absolute fustercluck as the two gangs clashed inside a small-ass building. However, I do like seeing this many NPCs fighting in the same area. I'd imagine a few more and the engine would start to stutter, but now I wonder what that magic limit might be. After the skirmish, we all met outside where Dennis exposed a traitor among the ranks. They didn't shoot the guy, they just let him off with a simple expulsion. I hung out with the Roundels a bit more and now got a quest to go dress up to meet with the prince. Trust me, it doesn't matter what I wear, that dude won't be able to see it anyway. This had me sucking up to one of two rival clothing stores, and sabotaging the one that I didn't want to help. Now, I thought that the outfits provided would be the one that the shopkeep wore, so with my choices either summer clothes or a sparkly dress, I went with the pretty option. Only to find out that I was in fact not going to be wearing a pretty dress. Well, at least I've unlocked Ballistic Weave. Although being this late into the game, I will never end up using it. However, this did finally allow me to speak with the prince. He was still on a spacewalk and we had to administer some comics to bring him back down, and even though this was utterly pointless, I did get two quests that popped. Fair is Foul and Choose Life. Meeting with Dennis and Joan, it was clear that Fair is Foul was right up my alley. These two were plotting to give the prince an overdose with his next chem shipment, and then replace him to lead the Roundels with Pete clearly unable to do so. Alright, so how do we do it? 3 comics. That's all it takes to finish up this quest. Except, getting these chems were way harder than I thought. I went all around London looking for anyone to sell this as I couldn't make them, but I came up short-handed every single time. Alright, fine. Choosing Life it is. This had me trying to get the prince clean instead of just outright offing him. So now I'm out here sprucing up a safe house and clearing out some hooligans blocking the path. I'm so close I can almost taste it. Just let this be over with. With the hooligans dealt with, I was now tasked with going and getting some antibiotics, and whereas my brain immediately flipped into murder mode as typically antibiotics are only a survival thing, the beast was quelled as the requirements to make these were far more reasonable than Calmex, with the main ingredient just needing to be borrowed from Thames Haven. I've never been so happy to see a farm for something I normally skip in Fallout. Truly, the Thames folk are a people of all time. Look at how high quality this fish and chips is! God damn, this looks good! With the chems crafted, I returned to the safe house to administer them, only to be blindsided by the rest of the peanut gallery. Dennis and Joan, who were mere moments ago plotting to off the prince, tried to take the high road and accuse me of now trying to remove said prince. These guys really dogpiled on poor Mike here, accusing him of wanting to take over the roundos for himself. I tried my best to defuse the situation, and for one reason or another, I just couldn't indict Joan or Dennis to their previous plans. And then I got hit with 2 losing speech checks. So, Dennis attacked me, only to run like a coward after he got hit once. Well, at least he did help in one way. I was overdue for a snack. But this locked the quest up. I had just killed a major player in the quest department for the roundos, and no one in this room cared. That is until I started swinging. Oh, now you have a problem. Well, at least Pete is better. Only issue is, not a single one of these wackos had anything with writing on it so I could forge my petition. Alright, roundels, prepare to meet the sun! Oh, great, Pete is unkillable. Wait, where the hell did he go? Alright, new plan. I dosed up on as many intelligence boosting chems as I could and initiated dialogue again. This did the trick this time, as I was now stabbing the prince with his last dose of sober. Thankfully, the intelligence boost carried over into this check as well, because who knows how this would have played out if I killed him during this section. Pete recovered almost instantly and then put on his best Christian Bale voice, claiming to not be the hero the rounders needed, but the ones they deserved. Look, man, can you just sign my petition? I got places to be. But before he even had a chance, Miller's men apparently rolled up and started making a fuss outside. Everyone whipped out guns, but I whipped out my petition. I don't care about your turf war, just sign this damn piece of paper. Thankfully, he did. This one string of side quests had taken me nearly 7 hours of running around and helping out the various factions. This felt a lot like taking settlements in Fallout. Oh god, do I miss Preston Garvey? Putting that thought at the back of my head like most of my real life responsibilities, I ran like I had never ran before to the Westminster Palace. Please, just let me in. You don't know what I've had to go through to get this. Checking over my petition, it was clear everything was in order. But considering these are angel guards, you could never take anything they say or do at face value. Just like getting into the palace, apparently the main entrance was just for show, and I was instructed with going through a discreet entrance. I hopped into a ringing phone booth and was brought underground, where there were heaps of other phone booths. And scientists? What is going on here? Wait, why are there explosions? Wait, look, there's clearly been some misunderstanding. Look, even the scientists are underestimating the blast. Look, let me out and I won't say anything, I promise. Oh, wait, hold on, I'm not dead? Phew. But where am I going now? Ah, prison. Just where our character belongs. Seeing I was confused in my current predicament, one of the angel guards filled me in. He told me that Smythe needed to pay for her crimes. What crimes? No idea, but he was adamant. So much, in fact, that he spoke about a Mr. X I needed to go make contact with, who could put me on a direct path to taking on Smythe. But first, I'd have to break out of here. Oh boy, a stealth section. I searched myself for anything that could help and found a bobby pin allowing me to pop out. I also found a chisel that let me dig into the next cell over. Ah, hello, kind sir. Please don't raise any alarms. Oh, is that the alarms I hear? Oh shit, is that a guard? Look, man, this is all one big misunderstanding. It'll all make more sense when you're in my stomach. You two, you're not special. Not too much further in, I managed to find all of my gear and then perform the best stealth section you'll ever see. If there isn't anybody alive to tell on you, then by my thoughts, that means I got away scot-free. GG, easy game. Quite literally walking out the front door and leading into the police station, nobody even seemed to care that I was here. See? No one said anything. Now let's go see what this Mr. X is up to, shall we? Heading into the Museum of Science, I made meals out of angel soldiers, who for one reason or another hate me. Maybe that other guy just had a soft spot for cute cannibals. Meeting with Mr. X, who wasn't currently beating the shit out of Leon Kennedy, we got straight down to business. He said that I wasn't born in a lab, but merely kidnapped and experimented on. Okay, so who are my parents then, Mr. X, huh? You got any answers for that one? He dodged that question like your parents did when they bought you a Nintendo Wii, and instead offered me a chance to pull off the worst assassination job the world had ever seen. So who's getting bodied? Smythe. Duh. Mr. X here wanted me to head out to a medieval festival where a tournament would be happening, and it just so happens Smythe was supposed to be there. I was to place an explosive in the bleachers and then sit back, relax, and watch this whole thing blow over, regardless of how many casualties join the fray. Seems Easy enough. What's the worst that could happen, right? Oh shit, is this a Clockwork Orange? Dude, standing that close to the TV is gonna do horrors to your eyesight. And speaking of horrors for your eyesight, holy hell, the lag got insane here. This is nearly as bad as when I stayed in Sanctuary, but that was with tons of loaded in corpses, so does that mean this whole area is just jam-packed full of people? If I'm lagging this bad outside, I'm scared of what is beyond this gate. Without a ticket, I paid a robot a ton of money to fuck off and got allowed into the festival. Okay, this isn't so bad. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of people, but the lag must have— Holy shit, my eyes! Giggles aside, it seemed to only be this small pocket of the fairgrounds, but I'll cut to the chase so you don't have to see this. I planted the explosives and then talked with the guard who helped me escape from prison. Homie was just as keen as me to see the fireworks. And after sitting down, the frames returned to a constant viewing experience. Time to watch Smythe exit stage right. Holy shit, I just killed a ton of people and Smythe lived? Who could have seen this coming? Wait, they could just make government announcements like this? Oh, dude, I've messed up. But it's all G, as now I finally got my hands on knight armor. Ah, it's good to be grossly incandescent once again. Feels like home. Now, where's my son? With this quest concluded, I got 3 faction-specific quests that popped up. One for the Knights of Camelot, one for the 5th Column, and one for Angel. I'm assuming we've moved into the lockout section of the run, but let's be honest, medieval knights are badass. So for our first time through London, let's give them a shot first. This actually had me talking to Lancelot, who gave me access to Camelot. I told you I'd find a way back in here eventually. Lancelot tasked me with speaking to King Arthur, except he was currently busy overseeing a duel, one between a Fletcher and a Bailey, with the Bailey earning a permanent dirt nap. Now able to talk to Arthur, he spoke about democracy in the same way Preston spoke about rebuilding the Commonwealth. He informed me that this duel that had just happened had been building for quite a while. The Fletchers were a group of hunters and the Baileys were woodcutters, and both families believed that the others were sabotaging their duties. However, with Camelot needing both families to provide food and supplies, they couldn't afford for one family to end belly up. So it made sense to send me because I was about as third party as possible to the entire situation. I questioned members on both sides about the hijinks at hand. The Fletchers spoke about a fire breaking out and killing animals they were hunting, and upon investigating deeper into the Baileys, they informed me that someone had set fires to burn down their trees. What's with that gimp leg, buddy? You look a little hurt. I checked out the fire's location and came to the conclusion it was deliberately started, and a trail of blood left the scene. Following it led me to a boy named Timothy. He seemed super awkward and claimed that he could help with the investigation. Hell, he even provided a note that incriminated the Fletchers as the culprits. Definitely not fabricated at all. I decided to press the Bailey with the bum leg and he spilled the beans. This whole thing had been an accident. Timothy and Ryan had gotten spooked by a rad stag and dropped a lantern, setting the forest ablaze, and for some reason they chose to hide these details, maybe thinking it would look sus if they told the truth? But with the details all presented, I returned to Arthur to fill him in. Pleased with the results, Arthur bestowed the rank of sergeant upon me. And now that he could trust me, he wanted me to talk to Percival, his radio operator who had another job for me. Yeah, that can wait. I'm about to blow my tickets all over this vendor right quick. I need me one of these bows! After a quick shopping spree, Percival informed me that I'd be heading back out to Brickton to sabotage the Tommies that worked there. Not to kill them, just to get them to leave. This would get the tribals on our side, and also give a better chance for democracy, as the Tommies wanted order, but only if you followed the Queen's orders. Meeting back up with Roach, he instructed me on how to be a right menace. First, I disabled their generators, causing their turrets to sleep forever. I spoke to the settlement's local gossip and told her that Lieutenant Doyle didn't even like tea. He only drank it because it was all they had. This had her spreading rumors to the other soldiers that Doyle wasn't even a real Brit at that point. And to top off this shit show I was brewing, I poisoned the rations with laxatives. But this wasn't enough to get them to leave. Now I needed to go light some manure on fire, which would blow the smell into the Tommy camp, tagged a wall, and told the local gossip that the major coming through not only hated tea, but didn't even like the Queen! The audacity! This put the entire camp on red alert with tons of infighting. But we weren't done yet! I headed over to find a caravan that had gotten stuck with Tommy's supplies. A little robbery that would put the camp at a huge disadvantage. And with a final letter calling the major a poopy head, the camp was disbanded. Mission accomplished. Relaying the news of my deeds to Percival, I was now tasked with seeking out Merlin, who promoted me on the spot, before assigning me to go to an outpost that had recently fallen under attack. And since Merlin couldn't get a concrete answer out of anyone there, he tasked me with going out to the outpost and seeing what exactly happened and how to fix it. Yay for more busy work! First up was killing off the beef eaters that had tried to set up shop in the region. Can't have my knights being eaten in the middle of the night, now can we? You can't see it, but there's a visual pun in there. I got the Fletchers to supply Camelot meat and met with Levy Daniels here, who ran off at the first sign of being held accountable. Bro, where the hell you going? We've all got to pay up eventually. You can't run forever. Ah, he stopped. Except, I get why he ran. Poor guy here had a bad case of PTSD. He was having a hard time clearing his head of haunting images and men being forced to take lives only to break down when reality seeped in. I won't lie, normally I don't really care what happens in video games like this. But there are those moments that shine through from time to time that remind you of the humanity the characters and denizens have in these worlds. Like Dom finding Marie in Gears 2, or Arthur's tragedy in RDR 2. London up to this point had actually been one of those rides where I'm still in the dark on a lot of things, but as we meet with multiple NPCs locked in struggles that aren't as black and white as they originally seem, it creates this feeling of a living world. Yes, our character is the catalyst to move events along the way, but if we had died in that lab, these events would have continued without us. That's a feeling in Fallout 4 that I never got. Damn it, London! You're making me feel things. Stop it! Getting back to the sillies, I met up with Alex Pilley, who needed to learn how to make landmines. And that's where I come in, even though he would have been safer picking literally anybody else. I was given a math exam on a college level, and seeing how this playthrough had gone so far, we all know I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. Whereas this test required the intelligence of a machete in the hands of a deranged camper, I was more on the level of the thrice bent nail in a board at the bottom of that one lake. The name escapes me, but I'm pretty sure it had something to do with crystals. Meaning this poor bastard lost his hands more than once. Look, don't blame me for this, even my chat was caught off guard at this equation. How the hell do you get 225 out of this? With the outpost now up to tip-top shape, all we had to do left was get sandbags from Lancelot and then storm the last remaining hooligans. The constant explosions didn't do very well for morale, but being able to test out my Robin Hood skills felt very badass. Seeing Bannerman charging amongst the flames had me excited as hell for a large-scale assault with these little goobers at my side. As sick as this assault was, our next task had our good name squandered. A terrorist attack had occurred inside a Tommy-occupied station, and since the Knights of Camelot had intentions to work with these guys in the future, I needed to go and figure out what really happened to clear our name. When I arrived, the Tommies were just as confused as we were, especially since the identities of the Knights were unknown. Checking the explosion site, not seeing anything to go off of, I tried to talk with one of the victims of the attack, and although he was suffering from shell shock, he spoke of tunnels, and that someone had run into them. Bloatflies and rat shoes tried to stop me, but I rushed through and found the culprits. 2 Knights of Camelot. They admitted to their crimes and even said that the detonation had messed up, which is why Tristan here was injured. But then he dropped that he had only done this due to his family being held hostage by the 5th column, with a promise that if the station blew, they'd release them. Well, seeing how you fucked up the attack, I take it you're not going to get him back. If only you had a morally confused cannibal ally who was more than capable of freeing family members from the grips of Unionists. Oh, sorry, what happened there? I blacked out for a bit. I told Tristan that somehow his family had been freed, to which he was grateful. He also handed me a note of resignation. When he joined the Knights of Camelot, he thought ride or die meant something entirely different. And now, knowing that the 5th column could just kidnap whoever they wanted, he bowed out. Send me a postcard from greener pastures, homie. Some of us won't get that privilege. Returning to Arthur, I informed him that since the 5th column was able to figure out who Tristan was and track down his family, they more than likely had an insider. Arthur promoted me to the title of Gaheris in finding this information, but before celebration could commence, an attack broke out. Tommies were invading. I joined the Knights in pushing back the assault, which was surprisingly easy since they sent such a small force to attack our entire base, which seemed even more odd considering they were attacking from multiple sides at the same time. Once the Tommies had been pushed back, Arthur rounded us up and claimed that it was time to nut up or shut up. Leading the charge, he ran out into the woods to tackle the last of the opposition. But we cut straight through those Tommies, especially since James Bond was on our side. With the night 1, Arthur sent me to check in on the northern outpost we had just taken, and thankfully with all of the training I gave them, they survived, and kept the Tommies at bay. Once more returning to Arthur, he put 2 and 2 together that this attack seemed way too coordinated, especially for a group that we didn't normally have beef with. No, this was clearly insider information. Like I told you earlier! And now, while the commotion was quiet, would be the best time to figure out who it was. which meant teaming up with Lancelot to get to the bottom of this. Lancelot informed me that there could be two ways to go about this: to get someone to spill the beans at the tavern while drunk, or by interviewing survivors of last night's assault. Lancelot took the tavern before I even got a chance to say anything, which meant I was harassing Tommies outside. And after holding a medic ransom for information, I found out exactly what I was looking for. I was informed that the insider met at a post box every single day for dead drops, railroad style. After beating the shit out of the post box to get the mail, I returned to Lancelot only to find him drunk. But thanks to the barkeep, we figured out that the insider was a gambling addict. How are you supposed to be helping me, you washed out Mr. Clean? Oh, now you want to fight me? Why are all of you encouraging him? After absolutely humiliating Lancelot in front of everyone, there was one gambler who didn't want to pay up. And it just so turns out that with a little bit of threatening, we had found our spy. Now seeing there was no point in running, Jeff here gave us everything. He was working as a spy for the 5th column, but had fallen out of the cause, only continuing to be a spy because it was all he had. Seeing how deep in the shit he was, he also pointed up his half-brother Horatio, who happened to be in cahoots with Smythe. He also spoke about a spy in high Tommy command. Seeing that Camelot would need more help in securing democracy for London with spies running around, Arthur tasked me with heading out to the Imperial War Museum. Except he had recently gone on hiatus, leaving the Colonel Major in his place. Damn, dude, we've talked to you heaps of times throughout this playthrough. You're clearly important. The Major here informed me that peace sounded like a good idea since both the Tommies and Knights were still recovering from their last bout, but he couldn't do anything with the General missing, especially since there were 2 Majors vying for control in the General's absence. However, I did get the Generals to relocate to a neutral zone while they awaited the return of their General. Speaking of the General, where was he? Whereas normally he'd be giving you incredibly discounted car insurance, the Majors had told me he'd actually gone missing before the Tommy attack on Camelot, so I went searching through fields to see if I could find him. And considering there were feral dogs running through the fields, I'd wager they were having a nice snack. Oh look, a dead General! But that means free loot. Oh, how sad. Oh, free food! Why am I like this? Dragging the body from the field, our medic found out that he had been shot in the back of the head. Most likely led to this field during the assault and then taking out during the commotion. I returned to the Majors and informed them that the General wasn't coming home. This meant the Colonel Major would assume leadership, except he still had the other Major to worry about, who, come to think of it, was the last one who saw the General alive. Homie, you didn't think to disclose this information when I started investigating in the first place? Huh? You didn't think that bit of information would have been useful at all? But since he couldn't find the missing Major now, it became clear that he was the spy among the Tommy's ranks. Oh, and Jeff said his half-brother Horatio was supposed to be meeting with a Dr. James North about defense plans, meaning the 5th column was slowly working their way to toppling everything we had worked so hard for. Luckily for me, Arthur wasn't opposed to using spies of our own, especially since we had a knight named Guinevere who was going to help us drop in on this said meeting. I met with our spy who had a fallen love for the railroad, as they even used their call sign, then informed me that I'd have to look the part if I was just going to walk into this private party. And luckily, I didn't need to do a quest to get anything, I just had to rock the General's outfit and walk straight in. Meeting with Gwen, she said our target was pretty useless and that it was more suspicious that he was dealing with Smythe. So I mingled the best I could while literally standing right behind Dr. James North and listening to his phone call. We made eye contact the entire time he spoke about crucial meeting details. Time to go bust up an informant. Sorry lads, hope you don't mind me eating your friends in front of you. Alright, who's the homie working for you in the Tommies? Who could have guessed? Honestly, I'm blown away. The Tommies could have sorted this out themselves, but hey, it's a small price to pay for peace between factions. With the 5th column causing us so many issues, it only made sense to go on the attack for once, and that involved taking over the Tower of London full of beefeaters. Which by this point in the run was child's play. However, their leaders did have some immaculate drip, I must say. Just look at this! Now I can bash its style. With our forces moved into position, we can now get on with removing the 5th column permanently. This was the perfect opportunity to test out my bow. Holy shit, these explosives are amazing! Oh, too close! Too close! With the Knights raiding the 5th column main base, it wasn't long before the base was covered in bodies. Even the bartender got it. No one was safe. Kicking in the final door, the leader lay dead. Meaning, we won! And since the 5th column were no more, that meant the only thing in the way of democracy now was the entirety of Westminster. Before taking on the government, I stocked up on arrows. After talking with Arthur about battle plans, I waited 7 days and headed towards Westminster. Normally I wouldn't talk about this, but I found a rather unique lightning puzzle, and upon solving it, I even got the dirty weldy weapon. And it throws people through the sky? Oh yeah, I'm gonna need ammo for this thing. Together with the knights, we met on the bridge to Westminster. Trebuchets lined the walls, and it was clear the only way from here was forward. I was gifted the honor of launching the trebuchet, and this is... Where's the kaboom? Damn it, the government won't let us have anything fun! Now, I won't lie. Considering Westminster is the biggest place in Fallout London as one cell, and there's tons of enemies, I figured the frames would commit. But for the most part, they held up pretty well, even while I used explosive arrows. Hell yeah! Whereas explosive arrows are awesome, I only had so many, meaning it was time to issue out more return policies. We traveled through the war cabinet under 10 Downing Street, to which I watched the Goon Squad gank super clones, back to the main streets where I created a second sun, and then we stormed Parliament, where I slowed down time and turned off the gravity for the hard-working Angel members. Yeah, this final assault is a massive fight, spanning nearly 2 hours in length. At one point I entered a room where if I even looked towards the exit door, the game lagged heavily. Not sure what was happening, but I'd imagine we'll find out soon. What the fuck is going on here? Ah, wait, my suspicions were correct. All of these lovely looking people look just like us. So we are a clone. Okay. And like that angel guard that broke us out of jail, we had free will. Hence the chem addiction. Now, regardless of that, why can't I hit myself? Am I tripping right now? Seeing my confusion, Smythe, the real Smythe, tried to have me stand trial, blaming Camelot for overthrowing the government that couldn't possibly exist without the gentry. My response? In the year of our Lord 2024, the great prophet Vegeta once spoke, "I'm not a big fan of the government." This made me lose my case, as apparently these guys aren't big rap fans, and I was forced to abandon all my weapons and climb the massive clock tower. With the quest objective being to meet my maker, we had our final confrontation with Smythe inside a clock. This is a dope-ass set piece, by the way. They explained that much like me, they were also a clone. The original Smythe dated way back to pre-war times, where they began experimenting with cloning. This allowed them to give themselves an infinite amount of time to weasel their way into the gentry and replace everyone with themselves. Meaning Smythe was effectively the eyes and ears of London and had been for some time. And with the ability to create flash clones, aka angel guards with only a 3-year lifespan, Smythe could effectively keep all cogs turning with very little chance of fighting back. That is until we got out. A chance encounter for a chance individual. It was a one-in-a-lifetime event that would ultimately spell Smythe's downfall. At least in this case, who knows what would have happened if we chose to work with a different faction, or even Angel themselves? So, how do we end this? Smythe threw us an umbrella and the last 1v1 of the run took place. Which can only end one way considering our character is spec'd for melee. Not only that, but they didn't take our chems. With Smythe beaten, we had one last choice to make. Save her, or let her fall. If we save her, she goes to prison only to break out and never be seen again. But if we let her fall, then she perishes here and now. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter which one you pick, because this choice only changes one slide in our endgame slideshow. We see that Arthur leads Camelot into a golden age and democracy is able to flourish, and every faction we've come into contact with lived well. Except for the Thames folk. They left London altogether. Our companions lived happy lives, and then the credits rolled. Fallout London plays out much in the same way New Vegas does, where it ends once you beat it. Your story is concluded. But that doesn't mean the adventure is over. Hell, I've reloaded behind the final battle, and I'm still running around finding new things. This isn't just a mod for Fallout 4. This takes the ideas of Fallout 4 and cranks everything to 11. The factions, the world space, quests that actually matter, and a way of making the player emotionally invested in what is going on in this land across the pond. The way I see it, Fallout London might as well be its own game. The team have done an amazing job, and I wish them the best success moving forward with whatever they have planned. And that concludes our first playthrough. I've already got some ideas kicking for theme runs, so if you're wanting to see more, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Before we go, I want to give a massive shout out to the patrons over on Patreon, the channel members, and anyone who attended the live streams. I'm glad you guys got to experience this with me, and you're all truly wonderful people. It wouldn't be the same without you. Sorry for this one being a bit long, but if you're hearing this, You're amazing, and I hope you have an amazing day because you deserve it. As always, I've been Chris from Crisis Gaming, and I will see you on the next one.